Mini Ethnography Case Study. Quality Education for Students of a Diverse Population. My name is Stephanie Jimenez. This is for SPED360, Diverse and Exceptional Students. My professor is Sister Kayla Fitzgerald, and this is for BYU, Idaho. The purpose of this project was to interview and research a person from a diverse population so that as a future educator, I could consider this minority group and be mindful of how to provide them with quality education. The name of my interviewee is Sophia Palacios. This is a pseudonym name that I have created in order to protect her privacy and that of her family. Throughout my presentation, I will be referring to everyone with a pseudonym, and the main person is Sophia Palacios. Sophia is 25 years old. She has been married for a little bit over a year, and she has a 2-month-old baby. Sophia was born in San Jose, Costa Rica. Costa Rica is a country located in Central America. Sophia is Hispanic, and Spanish was her first language. When Sophia was 10 years old, her family moved to the United States of America. Sophia's family consists of her mother, her father, and one younger brother, who I will call Diego. The reason why Sophia's family decided to move to the United States of America was to improve their quality of life and to have better financial success. Although Sophia's family was never considered at a poverty level in Costa Rica, they did struggle to make ends meet. Her mother was a stay-at-home mom, and her father was a contractor for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He did the landscaping and some maintenance in the church's buildings throughout the city. When the opportunity arose for them to move to the United States of America, they decided that they wanted to do that. They didn't have any knowledge of the English language, and they had one family member that lived here in the United States, in the state of Nevada. However, they moved initially to Washington, which is where they had some contacts and a potential job at a dairy farm for her father. While I was interviewing Sophia, she mentioned how blessed she felt to have been able to attend school in Costa Rica. The education system in Costa Rica can be considered superior among many other countries in the area. Costa Rica's educational system is divided into private schooling and public schools. And the biggest difference between the two are where the funds come from. One comes from the direct payment of the parents and their monthly dues, and the other one comes from the government itself. All students in Costa Rica are required to be in school uniforms to ensure equality among the students. So I've enclosed a picture of a school in Costa Rica, and this is what most classrooms look like down there. As you can see, this is a public school where the resources are limited and things are very, very simple and plain. There is usually not anything hanging on the walls. There's usually not any posters, or if there are, they are very limited. And it's mainly due to the lack of resources. The desks are simple. There is very little color, and everyone is wearing a uniform. Despite the poverty level of some of these families, the uniforms are the way to keep everyone equal, and they are highly enforced as far as keeping them clean, ironed, and keeping everyone's hygiene up to date as well. So the students are taught this from a very, very early age, and this is something that Sophia was also taught down there. Sophia was in 4th grade when she moved to the United States. And an interesting and funny story that she mentioned was that she was attending a public school at the time where they were teaching her English as a second language. Apparently, Sophia was struggling a little bit with the learning of the second language. And when her parents went to a parent teacher conference, they were told by the teacher that Sophia was not doing very well in English, and they strongly encouraged them to switch her to another school where she could actually learn another second language instead of English. Her parents followed through with this advice. They removed her from the public school that taught English and placed her in another public school in a different district, and she began to learn French as a second language. This did not last long because a few months later, they ended up moving and relocating to the United States. However, Sophia looks back on this time with smile and a little bit of a giggle because she just looks back at the irony that she was told that she could not learn how to speak English. And now English is her main language. And she actually considers it in a way to almost be her first language because it is a language that she uses every day to communicate with her husband, with her daughter, with her coworkers and classmates and friends. Although she is still very fluent in Spanish, she does not use it as much as she does use English currently. When asked about the change of culture and the possible culture shock that she felt when moving to the United States of America, one of the things that Sophia mentioned was that the biggest shock was probably the language. She and her family arrived here without speaking any English. The father was the only person that had some English knowledge, but it was very, very limited. They knew some of the basic words, and one of the main things that Sophia remembers learning on the airplane was how to say the word restroom. That is all she recalls knowing when she arrived here in the United States. Not speaking any English was definitely a challenge for her. She suddenly could not communicate with others. There were a couple other things that affected her culturally. The food, she says, was different. Although her parents always tried to search for the same types of food that they ate in Costa Rica, somehow the ingredients were different and things didn't taste the same. Another thing mentioned was that she suddenly felt different and became a minority overnight. She came from a country in which everyone looked like her, acted like her, spoke like her. She was just one of the kids in school. And suddenly she was that kid. She was the one that was being pointed at. She was the one that was different. She felt like she no longer belonged to to a specific group, and she found herself trying to figure out where she belonged. Another thing that was a shock to her was that she suddenly became her parents' advocate at a very young age. Although she didn't speak English, she did learn English quickly, just as her brother did, a lot quicker than her parents. As a matter of fact, she became her parents' translator throughout the rest of her life. And to this day, she is still translating for them. And this caused her to feel a sense of responsibility over her family. So she felt like she had to grow up rather quickly, and a lot of things that children should probably not have been involved in at the time was something that she was involved in, such as family finances, conversations with banks, conversations with government entities, and many other things that caused her to grow up rather quickly and have to mature faster than a normal child would have to because of this change in culture. Emotional disturbance is something that happens very commonly amongst people who have had culture shock in some way, shape, or form. In a paper by Mumford in 1998, it is mentioned that when people find themselves in an unfamiliar cultural environment for the first time, it is common that they will suffer from some sort of emotional disturbance. Coping difficulties are expected, and new experiences can be overwhelming and difficult to assimilate. This happened in the case of Sophia, where she felt overwhelmed arriving at a new school where she did not speak the language or knew the culture. There were times when Sophia recalls feeling depressed and having some emotional problems, and these were due to many factors, but definitely the change of culture and the shock that she went through as a child. Although children can easily acclimate to different environments, it is important to take into account that not everyone is the same. And as educators, we need to have in mind the possibility that our students may be going through some sort of emotional disturbance, especially if they just arrived in the United States from another country and they are barely learning how to get along in this new culture with all of the different changes, and on top of that, adding a different language. Throughout my presentation, I will be discussing some themes that emerged from Sophia's interview. These were elements that added to her success in being able to complete her education here in the United States of America. She is also successful in receiving her bachelor's degree from the University of Brigham Young University in Idaho. And in many other ways, she has been successful. Some of the themes that I will be referring to throughout my presentation are: Sophia had supportive teachers. She learned self-love and acceptance by recognizing her divine heritage as a child of God. And of course, a loving and supportive family. When asked to expand on her supportive teachers, Sophia mentions, quote, "I had saved my ESL teachers' names and contact information for a long time, and I even invited one of them to my wedding. They really made an impact in my life." Close quote. As educators, it should be our goal to develop long-lasting relationships with our students. We should let them know that we care and love them, that their lives are meaningful to us, and that we want what is best for them. It is clear that Sophia's ESL teachers did this, so much so that she saved their information through the years, stayed in touch, and later invited them to her own wedding. I look forward to being able to be this type of educator that students can look up to, that they can look for when they want to share their successes in life, and that they can look up to as an example of somebody that loved them, cared about them, but also taught them. Students who have positive relationships with their teachers feel motivated to learn and supported. Students are more engaged when they have a supportive relationship with the teacher. They tend to work harder in classroom, persevere, accept direction and criticism, cope better with stress, and pay attention more to the teachers. Little and Kovac, 2003. We can clearly see that this is something that happened with Sophia and the relationship with her teachers. She felt motivated and supported to continue learning and to continue to put her best effort in their classroom. She was able to accept their direction, so much so that her career path had to do a lot with what her teachers taught her. One of her teachers was a communicator who had also gotten a degree in teaching English as a second language. Sophia looked up to her so much that she decided to follow in her footsteps. She did not study English as a second language to teach, but she did study the language of sign language. Sophia took some classes in the university and is now fluent in sign language and is able to translate for others. It is clear that the impact that her teachers left in her life have affected her life in a positive way. Sophia's journey to self-love and acceptance was not an easy one. Although she had grown up in the church, she struggled with fitting in. She struggled with her identity as a child of God. It is not easy being a child and moving to a different country where you do not speak the language, where you look different than everyone else, where your family's customs and traditions are not the same as everyone around you. Sophia was suddenly different, and this was not easy for her. She had to really dig deep into her soul to find herself as a child of God, and to know that no matter what she looked like, she was loved. One of the things that Sophia struggled with the most was when she entered middle school. When she was in middle school, she moved to the state of Utah. She moved to southern Utah, to be exact. There were more people in this school that looked like her. There were more students that were from Mexico. The majority of the minority population in the school were from Mexico. However, because Sophia was not Mexican, she also did not fit in. They excluded her. Sometimes they would even call her privileged because she was not Mexican. And they told her that her teachers had preference over her than them. Another thing that highly affected Sophia during her middle school and high school years was that she was a very attractive young woman, more so than many of the other students. And this became a curse because now they made fun of her because of her beauty. Sophia definitely did not fit in, not with them, not with the Americans. She was an outsider. It was thanks to her journey of self-love and acceptance that Sophia was able to find love and success and self-love. She was able to see that no matter who you are surrounded with, that you are a unique individual and a child of God and loved by Him. She was able to see the beauty in others, and she was able to create empathy towards those that were in her same situation and became their friend. The next slide, you will hear something very traumatic that happened to Sophia when she was in middle school. There was a group of students who did not like her. This group of students belonged to the Mexican culture. They were a minority themselves, but they were excluding Sophia because she was not Mexican. And this is what they plotted to do.
It got to a point that in 7th grade, the last semester I was ever in ESL with 8th graders, some girls had plotted how they were going to kidnap me and take me to a field and kill me.
It was not easy for her to live through this, to have her classmates plot and plan on taking her out to a field to kill her, in her own words, was absolutely devastating to her soul. She feared for her life. She feared for her family's life. She did not understand why this was happening. And this started her journey of finding herself through the grace of God and His mercy. She was able to overcome this. Luckily, nothing ever came of it. She didn't go into too much detail as to what happened with the students, but she did mention that she was actually grateful to have gone through the challenges that she went through during this time of her life because it helped her to become closer to God. It got her down on her knees and she developed a stronger relationship with him. She learned to love herself for who she was and stopped seeking attention from others, which had been something that she had been doing for quite a while, trying to fit in. Thanks to the journey of self-love and acceptance that Sophia went through, she was able to succeed and is now leading a very happy and joyful life with her husband and her baby daughter. In an article by Narisha Mirage and April Kurd in 2013, it mentions that there are several methods to develop self-love. Some of those methods are practicing deep gratitude, having the courage to be who you are, celebration and affirmation of self and others, self-acceptance, and having positive role models. These are definitely some of the things that Sophia went through in her journey of self-love. Rodney Ferris mentions that self-love involves having respect for one's physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual health and comprises the following tenets: self-knowledge, choosing to let go of the past to live in the present, spirituality, clarity of intention, and non-judgment from self-acceptance and interconnectedness. Sophia had to definitely let go of the past and choose to live in the present. She had to let go of all of the hurtful things that happened to her, and she had to have clarity of intention. Her intention was to graduate from high school. Her intention was to serve a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Her intention was to have an eternal family. She's been successful with each one of these things, and she is definitely somebody that we can look up to on how to overcome challenges in our life. Sophia was lucky and blessed to have been born into a loving family. Her father held a strong priesthood presence in the home. She had a wonderful example from her mother of love, kindness, and charity, and she always had the support of her brother, who was also her best friend. He was only a year younger than her, and they were raised together and went to school together. When they arrived in the United States, because of the way that school starts here, as opposed to Costa Rica, they were placed in the same grade. Although Sophia should have been placed in the 5th grade, she was placed in 4th grade and had to repeat that grade again. Her brother started 4th grade. So Sophia and her brother were able to go through their whole school journey being part of the same grade. This made them really close to each other, and she has a very strong bond and relationship with him. In her words, Sophia says about her family, quote, "I know that much of my success is thanks to my family and the way they raised me. I was able to learn from a young age about the gospel of Jesus Christ. My father held the priesthood in our home, and so did my brother. My mother was always an example of hard work and dedication." Close quote. It is clear that Sophia loved her family very much, that she was raised in the church that taught her correct principles. It is clear that her success is due partly thanks to the family that she was raised in, and she is aware of this and grateful for it. Having a heart of gratitude is also very important in order to have success in life. Let's dive into a little more information about the diverse population that Sophia belongs to. Because Sophia was born in Costa Rica, Central America, and she immigrated to the United States, Sophia is considered a Hispanic, therefore a minority in the United States. Hispanics include all immigrants from Latin America and their offsprings. In 2005, there were nearly 40 million Hispanic immigrants and descendants of Hispanic immigrants living in the United States. In fact, it is predicted that about 60 million Hispanics and Hispanic Americans will be living in the United States of America by the year 2030. It is interesting to also note that in the year 2002, Hispanics passed African Americans as the largest minority ethnic group in the United States. The main language of the Hispanic culture is Spanish. Something interesting that I learned in my research was that the term Hispanic was actually created by the US federal government in the early 1970s. This was done in an attempt to provide a common denominator to a large but diverse population with connection to the Spanish language or culture from a Spanish-speaking country. The term Latino is increasingly gaining acceptance among Hispanics, and it reflects the origin of the population in Latin America. The Hispanic family has very strong ties. They are considered the most important social unit, and it usually extends beyond the father, the mother, and the children. Usually extended family members such as grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins form a part of this unit. And there is a moral responsibility within the Hispanic community towards the extended family to provide aid or help if they are ever in a difficult situation, including financial situations. When the elderly people in the family become ill or under poor health conditions, it is very common for Hispanic families to take them in and to take care of the elderly themselves, as opposed to some of the culture here in the United States where outside help is looked for in the caring of the elderly. It is common for people who travel or vacation in another city to look up their extended family members and to visit them and to even stay with them at their home. The family ties in a Hispanic family are very, very close. And this is something important to take into consideration as future educators if we ever have Hispanic families or children or students in our classrooms so that we can understand where they come from and some of the dynamics behind their family life and culture. I have been quoting and referencing an article titled Understanding the Hispanic Culture by Ann Clutter and Ruben Nieto. You can see more about this article in my references at the end of the presentation. But in the article, I like how they describe also the etiquette that Hispanic people tend to have. So they tend toward formality in their treatment of one another. A firm handshake is common practice between people as a greeting, but also a hug and even a light kiss on the cheek are very common greeting practices between women and men who are close friends or family. I myself come from the Hispanic culture, and I can say that the kiss on the cheek is very, very common in the Hispanic culture. And it was actually something that I struggled having to change when moving here to the United States. It is definitely not accepted here to go up to someone and kiss them on the cheek unless they are your significant other or very, very close family. This was something that at the beginning I did not understand myself. Sophia also mentions that she noticed this when she moved to the United States. She also struggled with this, and it was something that she had to learn. She had to adjust to the new culture, and she had to put her culture aside in order to be able to have success in this country. I will be referring to a website that I have really enjoyed reading and learning from as I am certifying myself in teaching English as a second language. It is called colorincolorado.org, and it's a bilingual site for educators and families of English language learners. In this website, there's an article titled Closing the Achievement Gap, Focus on Latino Students. And in this article, it mentions that Latinos continue to have low academic achievement and the highest dropout rates in the nation. There's also low college preparatory course enrollment and post-secondary attainment. It goes on to say that 1/3 of Latino students perform below grade level. And unfortunately, this increases their chances of dropping out of school from 50% to 98%. And it just depends on how far behind they are. And on top of dropping out, on top of having higher rates for dropping out, Latino students also tend to drop out earlier between the 8th and the 10th grades than other students. As future educators, this is important knowledge to have because it is clear that there's an educational gap happening somewhere between middle school and high school in which students are not able to continue with the curriculum for several reasons. This could be economic reasons, social reasons, family related, students that also live in extreme poverty and are not able to find the resources that they need for the challenging schoolwork that may be required of them. It can also be in relation to transportation and not being able to get to their school or find a way to get there. It could also be related to having siblings that they are responsible for, depending on their family dynamics. There are many, many reasons on why these dropout rates could be so high in the Hispanic population. And as educators, it is important to be aware of this so that we can help them in any way possible. Continuing with the website, it mentions that there are some barriers and challenges for Hispanic students to continue their high school and post-secondary education. Some of those challenges jeopardizing their chances to excel are disproportionate attendance at resource-poor schools, lack of access to fully qualified teachers, lack of participation in rigorous college preparatory coursework, parents with low household incomes and low levels of formal education, English language learners, and those with disabilities, both with unmet instructional needs. High mobility of students whose families are migrant farm workers, and students who are undocumented. When comparing this information to Sophia's specific experience, I can tell that disproportionate attendance was not something that affected her. She had a really good attendance throughout her school and high school days due to having full family support. Lack of access to fully qualified teachers is also something that she did not relate to. Fortunately, her teachers were highly qualified. She did participate in rigorous high school activities. She was even part of the student body council. She was involved in several extracurricular activities, such as cheerleading, and she was part of many clubs. She did live in a house with low household income, and her parents had very low formal education as well. So this is something that could have been a challenge or a barrier for her, but with support from her community, she was able to finance her college and also her mission. And she is the first person in her nuclear family that has a formal higher education and has gotten her bachelor's degree. In reference to unmet instructional needs, I don't recognize anything that was unmet with Sophia in being an English language learner. She feels that she had the support that she needed throughout her high school journey from her teachers, from the classmates that were helpful to her. And I don't think this is something that was a challenge for her. She did, although she was not part of the group of migrant farm workers, her father did work in a dairy farm. So he did not have to move around as much as some of these other groups of students might have had to. So this again was not something challenging to her. And as far as being undocumented, Sophia did not mention her family's legal status in the United States. I also did not ask. I did not want to make her feel uncomfortable, but I do know that they are very hard workers, have been working nonstop since they arrived in the United States, trying to provide for their families. And I do know that she was able to attend high school, college, and serve a mission. So this has not become any type of a barrier for her in finding success. When thinking about the strategies that helped Sophia as part of a diverse population with having success in school, there are a few things that we can take away from the interview with her. First of all, she always had access to a network of people who were genuinely interested in her success. From her family to her school teachers and staff members to the community at church, she always felt supported, and she always had at least one adult person that she could go to and talk to, and she knew that they would give her advice and be interested in her well-being. There was always an open line of communication with her teachers and with the staff members at the school. She was very well known in the school by others and well loved, and she never feared talking to her teachers or administration regarding problems that she may have had. They supported her very well the moments that she was having mental health problems and depression as well. She came from a supportive family and church community who always helped her and guided her and always also looked out for her well-being. She participated in many extracurricular activities, developing her talents and finding her self-worth. She also had access to certified trained professional teachers that had a degree in education. And she had access to a school counselor who followed up with her mental health and anxiety and depression. These things are very important for the success of a student. We do not know what backgrounds our students will come from. We do not know what type of mental health problems they might have or struggles in their lives. But having access to counselors, psychologists, and other people in the school that they can trust is extremely important for their well-being and success. I know that there are certain schools that do not have the financial means to have a psychologist on campus, but I also know that teachers can advocate for this and request from the district that a counselor or a psychologist be sent on a weekly or monthly basis, depending on what they allow, to be able to counsel students who are in need of it. As far as having trained, certified teachers with a degree in education, this is extremely important because nowadays there are many schools considered charter schools that are hiring staff members who are not certified or who do not have a degree in education. The requirements are that they must have a bachelor's degree, but not necessarily any experience in education. Having a degree in education is very important because it teaches us how to do classroom management, how to do lesson planning, We are also trained in how to deal with students of a different culture, diverse students, how to be able to help students who might have some kind of a handicap or learning challenges, or even students who are gifted and talented. This is a very important aspect of having the right training and certification that should definitely be considered by all schools and school districts when hiring staff members. There are different ways as educators and working in schools that we can empower our students through technology to be able to have a more multicultural perspective, as well as through books and literacy. For technology, we can have access to videos on YouTube. There are many videos on YouTube that teach and showcase how different cultures around the world live. You can look up things such as a day in the life of and type in the country, and you will have many different options of videos showcasing how people around the world in different countries live. You can also look up videos on customs and celebrations in different countries. And this is an excellent use of technology because we have the world in our computer, literally, and have access to that. Some other ways that we can use technology to help with multicultural perspective is to look up multicultural diverse activities on YouTube as well. There are people that have created many videos with many different ideas, activities, things that you can do in the classroom, things that you can do as a whole school, or even involve the community. As far as literacy, there are many, many books that we can incorporate into our classrooms, into our personal classroom libraries, but also into our school libraries that showcase people who come from diverse backgrounds. We can see in the picture here that these are the books from 2018, the bestsellers, and they were all books showcasing diversity. To end my presentation, I would like to answer the following questions. From what I've learned from this case study and from my research, how will I change my teaching practice to accommodate a more multicultural perspective? I think after being able to learn from Sophia's experience, as well as my own, I think that I have been able to create the empathy that I need to be a successful teacher in a classroom. I may not understand all of the struggles of my students, but I do understand what it feels like to be excluded because of the way you look or sound. I know that some of my students will have problems with mental health. I know that I might have students with disabilities. I know that I might have students suffering from being bullied. And I think that being able to have that empathy of having gone through some of those things myself allows me to have more awareness and to be able to recognize things as they are happening. I feel that when Sophia was bullied by her classmates to the point of being threatened, it would have been helpful if a staff member or a teacher had been able to notice what was happening before the threat actually occurred. I don't know to what point it was ignored or simply overlooked, but I do know that in the current educational field, teachers are overworked and schools are understaffed. And unfortunately, the priority, which should be the students' well-being and success, is being put aside. I know that as a teacher and educator, my resources may be limited, but I can advocate for my students' needs. They need to have a voice. They need to know that somebody will stand up for them, that somebody will support them in their struggles and their challenges. And they need to be able to feel this trust, and I want to be that person for them. I also would like to be able to have a classroom that is adept for students who may be needing some time to reflect, some alone time. I would like to create a space for them to do so and some privacy for them as well. In some of the things that I have learned this semester, I've also learned that having too many things in the classroom can be overwhelming for many of these students with challenges. On one of the studies that I did on autism, I learned that they can be easily overstimulated by sounds, by smells, and by visual things in the classroom. So I need to be aware of this as well when helping those students and when teaching them and when they are part of my classroom. And the second question that I would like to answer is, how can classroom teachers promote learning for students like Sophia and others from similar cultures or background? I believe that classroom teachers can promote learning for students like Sophia, who is a minority, being Hispanic, by trying to put themselves in the students' shoes, first of all. It is important for classroom teachers to have a knowledge of what it could feel like to come from another country to a place where you do not speak the language, understand the culture, and everything is such a shock. I think teachers need to be able to create awareness personally so that they are not so judgmental of their students who may be struggling in class, so that they may not lose patience with them so quickly, and that they may be able to be more loving and supportive towards them. I think it's important that classroom teachers also receive additional training regarding multicultural awareness, that they receive additional training for students that come from a diverse background. I believe that teachers should be certified and trained, and that they should have a professional degree in teaching, and that not anyone with any degree should just be placed in a classroom to be a teacher. I also think that it's important for teachers to create an encouraging environment within their classroom, where the students will feel welcome, but where also their classmates may also make them feel welcome and loved. I think that establishing those deep connections within the classroom of friendship and kindness and respect overall towards all people and all cultures is extremely important. I believe the teachers need to be able to instill those rules and discipline from day one and not accept anything less from their students. By providing their classrooms with multicultural activities, they can also promote learning by having access to a library with books that showcase different cultures, different races, different beliefs. They can also promote this by being a part of the community and their involvement in different activities that may showcase different cultures. There are many ways that classroom teachers can promote this, but more important than anything is by being a loving, kind, understanding teacher that genuinely cares about her students, that shows them that she is there for them, that she is their teacher, but also their friend, and that they can come to her for anything, anytime. I came to the United States at a very young age as well. Sophia's story really resonated with me because many of The things that she went through, I went through myself. Just like Sophia, who kept in touch with her ESL teachers, I kept in touch with them for many years. To this day, I remember their names. I remember what they look like, and I appreciate them because they truly made a difference in my life, so much so that I am now pursuing on becoming a teacher myself of English as a second language, because they left such an impression in my life that I want to be able to do the same thing for other children and leave an impression in their lives. I believe that teachers can have such a great impact in the future, greater than they even acknowledge sometimes or even aware of. And yes, we have to be cautious, but sometimes questioning every single thing that we do does not allow us to teach with love. And it may impede us from creating those bonds that are so important and so special. I am grateful that I was able to do this project, this presentation. I'm grateful that I was able to learn so much about Sophia, about her background and everything that she went through, because I do believe that having this knowledge and everything that I was able to read and research is going to help me to become a better educator. And I hope that in some way this also helps you to become a better educator and to be able to make a difference in the lives of all the students over whom you have stewardship. I would like to thank you for your time and your attention.